We're ready? We're recording?
We're recording.
All right. Um, hey guys, I'd like to welcome everyone to our second installment of Eliminating Stigma Through Story, where we interview people who have had experience with recovery or addiction and recovery so that we can help kind of end the shame that's associated with the idea of being an addict. I remember talking to someone about my career as an addiction counselor, and they said to me, that must be tough working with those people. And that kind of set me back. And I thought, well, I don't understand, because these people are the most courageous people that I get to meet. And I realized at that time, that's not what they get to see. I have the pleasure of seeing people, work really hard to change every day, but that's not necessarily what other people see. So we wanted to bring some of those courageous people in, so that they can share their experience with us, so that the whole world can understand a little bit more about what it's like to be an addict, and maybe even offer some people hope. The stigma around addiction is one of the reasons that it is so fatal. People don't want to ask for help. They don't want to get help because they're ashamed of it. And addiction is a health issue, and there should not be any shame associated with it. Anyway, one of those courageous people that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a while now is Colin Carlson. Colin and I met a few years ago when I was still a handsome, young, healthy living and recreation manager at a treatment facility. And Colin was at the early part of his journey. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch Colin grow and now contribute back a lot to the recovery community. So welcome, Colin, and thank you for joining us. And I love Canada, and I love geography and history. And you're from Lindsay, Ontario. Is that correct?
I am.
You are.
Yep.
And so I did a little bit of research on Lindsay. Do you know what Lindsay is famous for?
No, actually, I don't.
Lindsay is famous for having the
largest main street.
Yeah. Wide enough for to accommodate the turning radius of a 4-horse hitch.
Yes. Yep. It's all parking on angles there. The whole downtown.
And must be famous for having the oldest city planners in Ontario as well.
Yeah,
I took that into consideration.
Yeah.
Colin, what was it like as a young man growing up in Lindsay, Ontario?
So it was interesting because it's a rural community, and the people I grew up with, the friends that I had around me, we did a lot of drinking, and there was the odd drug use, but it was more drinking, just smoking pot and stuff like that. But definitely a weekend warrior type of thing. And there's not a lot for young kids to do up there. There's a few recreation facilities and stuff like that. And if you're into hockey, it's a big hockey town. But for me, I was a skateboarder. So I kind of hung out with all those guys, and we everyone I knew was kind of up to the same thing, and it was just be a weekend warrior, get your schoolwork done, and have a lot of fun. That was basically it. Try to make the most fun we could.
And home of the Lindsay Muskies. That's your hockey team, right?
Which, sorry?
The Lindsay Muskies is the hockey team.
The Lindsay Muskies, yeah. It was originally the Lindsay Bears for a long, long time, and then they changed to the Muskies. Yeah.
And I don't know what a muskie is, but I checked out the logo, and that's literally the scariest logo in minor hockey.
So a muskie is just a bigger version of a, I guess down here they call it chain pickerel. So it would be a chain pickerel on steroids. They're absolutely ferocious.
And that's exactly what the logo looks like.
Yeah.
When so when did you start getting involved in drugs, and how exactly did that happen for you?
So for me, my parents ended up getting separated when I was 12, and there wasn't a whole lot of attention being paid to my sister and I. So I kind of started doing some reckless behavior, maybe, and I think back on it now, it's probably to just get attention, right? To attention seeking. Um, I did a lot of crazy stuff that year. I smoked weed for the first time. Yeah, I would have been 12, 13 years old. I smoked weed for the first time. I got absolutely plastered drunk. And I remember the exact time I got plastered drunk. It was actually the day after Easter. And I'd found my grandfather's rum in the bottom of the grandfather clock. And my grandfather had passed away about 6 years before that. So it was well aged. And yeah, that was my first drunk. And yeah, I did a lot of reckless things in those couple of years. I ended up dropping out of grade 9 for almost a half a year, and really no one really noticed. It was just a lot of attention-seeking behavior, and I guess it was kind of an escape as well. I liked the feeling that drugs and alcohol gave me at that point in time, because I just felt something missing, and that made me whole. And yeah, and it just carried on from there.
What was your perception of, or did you experience in your youth and around that time with, did you have any experience with addiction, directly or indirectly, and what was your kind of perception on addiction at that point?
Well, my perception from from an addiction point of view, was like, well, everyone drank around me when I was young. Like my father, he was definitely an alcoholic. That was the direct reason for my parents' divorce. A lot of my uncles were pretty good drinkers. I wouldn't call them alcoholics because they wouldn't themselves, but they definitely fit the description of alcoholic. So it wasn't. I don't know if it was. I guess it was looked down upon, but it was also kind of a. That's what they did. That's you worked hard, you play hard, and that was the main thing.
So you were kind of seeing the negative impacts of addiction and stuff around, but still that, and I love the fact that you use the term need to escape, because it's something that I hear time and time again as a reason that they kind of fall in love with alcohol or drugs. Any sense of what it is that you were trying to escape?
Oh, just the feelings of negativity, the loneliness, the boredom. It added some excitement to my life. It was new. I knew that it was wrong to do it. And I don't know, I always had a problem with authority. And a lot of addicts that I know and alcoholics, they don't seem to like authority too much. It was different. Not everyone was doing it at the time, because I was pretty young when I started, and it made me what I perceived as cool, I guess. People kind of were like, "Oh, he's smoking weed, or he's drinking, or whatever," and it was like, "Yeah, I am," and it made me feel important. And it was an odd time, I guess. I wanted to be different, and I ended up not being so different, because I know so many people like me now.
So it started as fun and rebellion and kind of almost to fit in, or to, you were cool. Um, what was the evolution of that, of the lifespan of your use? Where did it kind of go from there?
Oh, well, it took me everywhere. They say jails, institutions, and death in one of the meetings, and I definitely came to all those places. I was at one point hospitalized for about a week and a couple days. I was put into a psych ward because I absolutely went insane from drinking so much. I went to jail 2 years in a row for the exact same crime. And death, I flipped my car 4 times and rolled it 3 into a telephone pole on my way back to Lindsay. And it was just, it was insanity. But the progression from age 13 to, I'd say, 18, that was just kind of a fun thing. I didn't do it all the time. 18 to about 20, I was a habitual pot smoker, among other drugs. Like, if you put it in front of me, I'd probably do it. The only thing I didn't ever end up doing was anything with needles, except for tattoos. But I had a healthy fear of needles, and I'm glad that I did. But from 18 to 20, I guess it was a habitual pot smoker. I was drinking fairly regularly, not anything, I wouldn't say alcoholically. And then from 20 to 25, I went to college, and I started managing a restaurant for a couple of folks. And it went from a staff of 16 in the winter to 75 college students in the summer. And that's where everything kind of ignited. And that's where I think I passed the point of no return. I started, by 25, I was day drinking. I was drinking all night, passing out, waking up and drinking again just to not feel so shitty. So that was definitely the turning point of my drinking career. 25 to, I'd say, 30, probably 33, right before my intervention, 34. I was drinking every day, at least. If I could, I was drinking at work if I could get away with it, and I usually did get away with it. I had structured my life around drinking, and that was the end goal every day. Plus, I was using a plethora of pills, and just, like I said, anything I could get my hands on, I would do. Cocaine was a huge problem at one point in time. I switched up what I did a lot, because I didn't want to become so addicted. But in the end, it definitely took its toll.
Kind of going back to that. Oh, sorry, Colin.
No.
No, I said going back, it's interesting, that point of no return. Now, could you see that happening at the time? Were you aware that things were spiraling out of control for you? Did it matter?
I knew things were getting bad. I was asked a few times to go to meetings. I wanted nothing to do with them. At that point, I knew things were getting bad. I really knew things were getting bad. I remember drinking at one point with my father, and I'd opened a beer for him, and I had one myself, and I was done the whole thing before he even had a sip of his. And he said, "Colin," he says, "I can drink." He says, "But you scare the shit out of me." And I knew that, like, I knew at that point that I was not headed for the right path. Did I care? Yeah, I cared, but I didn't have an answer to the situation that I was in. I had seen people in recovery, but they didn't look happy, and I knew that I wasn't happy, but I didn't. I guess it's like the devil you know or the devil you don't, kind of situation. So I also had a healthy fear of meetings as well. My dad had been sent away to some recovery houses and to try and save his marriage, and that kind of tainted my whole outlook on recovery. He was a strong man, and I wanted to, I figured I was just as strong as him, right? Like I could beat this, or I could slow down, and I made attempts to do it at different times, always short-lived, and always worse when I came back.
So you knew something needed to change. You just didn't know how.
Yeah.
Or even, I guess you probably didn't even have any experience that it was possible.
Right. Yeah.
When you did want to, when you finally kind of said enough's enough, or were there points where you said enough's enough and you tried to tackle it, head on, and you tried to do it, and what, did that happen? And if it did, what were the biggest challenges of that?
So everything my story is kind of weird. Like I do know I did want to change. My way of looking at it was suicide, and I wasn't able to. I was living on a 7th floor apartment, and I couldn't throw myself off the balcony. There was GO trains running in behind my house in Toronto. I couldn't walk in front of them, but I could go to the liquor store and to the drug dealer every single day, and I called it my suicide by installment plan. I knew that I was going to die. I didn't eat for weeks on end. And basically it came down to me getting fired from my last job I was at in Toronto. And about a week after that, I had an intervention. And that's kind of what started my whole recovery. I wouldn't have searched it out. It was all my family that organized it. I was either too proud or too stupid. I don't know which, but I wasn't in a place where I wanted help.
So tell us about so how did the road to recovery happen for you? You had an intervention, you went off to a treatment facility, and how did that go from there?
All right. Well, that was a wild year. So I did have the intervention. I wasn't so sold on the whole idea of getting sober, because I've been doing what I was doing for 20 some odd years. So I had the intervention. I ended up going to a treatment facility in Scarborough. I was in psychosis probably for about a week. I didn't realize that I was in Scarborough until someone pointed out there was a I was like, perfect. And I left that day, went home. The rehab phoned later and said, "Did you leave?" I said, "Yeah, I'm at my house and I'm happy to be here." My interventionist phoned. He said, "Colin, you got a choice. You can either go to California or you go to Nova Scotia." And my cousin he lives in California, active heroin user. So I kind of thought about it for a second. I was like, if I go to California and things get messy, I know I'll meet up with my cousin and things will not end well for me. I knew no one in Nova Scotia, but I knew Nova Scotia was pretty close to Toronto. So if anything went south, I could still get home to Toronto. So I told Bob, I said, "Yep, let's go to Toronto, or let's go to Nova Scotia." So from Toronto to Nova Scotia, that's where I met Adam at the facility the first time. I stayed there for, I think it was 4 months. I did a couple months in-house, and then I did a sober living house. And I wasn't in it for me then, and that's what I learned by the end of my whole year in treatment facilities, that you have to be in it for yourself. I left there after I think it was about 4 months, and I went back to Toronto to try and repair a relationship that was doomed from the get-go. I was in hot water by about 2 weeks in. I was back using exactly what I had been doing before. I called Bob, my interventionist, once again, and I said, I'm in trouble. And he got me on a plane, and I went to Nanaimo for another 3 months. And my addict brain went into full overload when I was about to go there, because I'd stayed with my sister the night before I left, and of course I was drinking and smoking weed and whatever else. And she said, Colin, she said, I don't care if you smoke weed, just do not drink anymore. And right then I was like, okay, I got permission. And that's basically one of my things. Like, I always seek approval and seek permission because I'm a people pleaser. So I figured to myself, I had a little bit of recovery knowledge, and I knew about the higher power and everything. And I thought to myself, okay, well, they're sending me to BC. It's the best weed in the world. My sister just gave me permission. I'll go do this program, and I'll go get a place of my own, and everything will be great. So I did the program out in Nanaimo. Didn't do anything they suggested. They said, basically, go to a sober living house. I was like, no, I've got a better idea. I'm going to go live with a college student who's never home. And I just kept on doing things my way. So about a week and a half out of being from that treatment facility, I was back doing exactly what I was doing before. I failed to mention my first, when they did my intervention the first time, I was 103 pounds, and I had no clue of when I had eaten last. They tried to go through a list of things, and that's one of the questions I could not answer truthfully. So in Nanaimo, doing the exact same thing I was doing. I basically lost 28 pounds, 29 pounds in a week and a half, and I knew I was in trouble again. So I called the treatment facility in Nova Scotia, and I said, I need help. Like, this is, I know I'm going to die. And I know I didn't want to die at that point, because I saw there were happy people in recovery, and I knew it was attainable. So this is going on about 8 months. I've been in treatment, in and out of treatment. Basically, I got back to Nova Scotia, and it was kind of like the most profound thing happened the next morning. I didn't want to drink and use, and I hadn't had that thought in probably, I'd say, 15 years, maybe 20 years. It didn't happen every day, but for that day, I woke up and I was like happy just to be alive and be in a safe space. So that carried on for quite a while. And I read a book in treatment. It was called When Everything Changes, Change Everything. And that's what I decided to do. I came to Halifax, and I didn't know anyone at all. And I decided to start my life over at the age of 34.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, they say it takes what it takes until it takes, right? So
It took.
Yeah. So how long has it been now?
October 22nd, it'll be 4 years.
Wow. Has it been that long? Holy moly.
Wow. That's congratulations.
Thanks.
So what?
And I'm so grateful that you moved to Nova Scotia. It's so much fun to see you around and see your recovery in action. I love your Instagram posts, and all these funny little places you go, and to see you out there living and loving and having a good time.
Yeah, life is good.
What do you do on a daily basis, like that kind of keeps you on the right path, and what keeps you focused? And because I know a lot of people, when they get a year or two in, they're like, all right, I got this, I'm good now. I can go back to drinking. That was just a bad time. There's all these things. So what is it for you that keeps you motivated on this path?
Well, I guess there's a lot of contributing factors to that. And every year has kind of been different for me. Year one was meetings, meetings, meetings. That's all I did. I also did a lot of service work. I became the chair of CA Maritimes for 2 years. So I was very active. Year two was a little bit different. My father passed away, and that would have been something that would have set me off to drink and use. Instead, I went home and went to his wake, and it was crazy, but I didn't drink and use. So one of the things that really stuck with me for that, though, was like he got to see me a year and a half sober before he passed away. So I think he was probably proud of me because of the fact that it wasn't something he was able to attain. So that kind of stuck with me through the next couple of years, right? I just wanted to do him proud, right? It was something that he desperately wanted, but wasn't ready to face the demons in his past. And that's one of the things about getting sober is digging through all the shit that made you use and fill that void in you, right? Like if you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you. So back to my years, like year three was even more of a challenge. I went back into the work world. I was working the whole time. I wasn't doing anything stressful, but then I went and managed a warehouse for a company, and that was a little bit more of a stressful time. So I kept on kind of amping it up. But the whole time I've been in contact with my sponsor all the time. I do a few meetings a week, definitely not as many as I did, but I still attend meetings. I also reached out a lot to people who I saw in the program for years and then went back out, and I asked them, I said, what happened? What changed? So I got that information as well. But for now, it's like a couple meetings a week and I'm good to go.
Awesome.
And the CA you mentioned, just for all the normies out there, the CA is a Cocaine Anonymous, which is one of the 12-step fellowship groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous that millions of us all over the world use as one of our support mechanisms for recovery.
Completely, yeah. CA for me, it was very inclusive, and I liked that. It was for all addictions. So yeah, CA, whatever program you feel comfortable going to, go to it. Like I don't know, that's what worked for me. And that's the thing about recovery. It's so individual.
Mark, did you have any final questions for Colin?
I guess kind of the cliche question, cliche question is like, what's one piece of advice that you found was something that if you can give to someone who's just starting in recovery, or wise words or anything like that? Some final thoughts.
Holy shit, there's so many. I'll say a few. One was after my first year, someone said to me, "Now the real work begins." That I think is a load of shit. The whole thing is work. Another one someone said to me was, "You're not terminally unique," which was another thing that I wore like a badge of honor, that I was the most unique person. Like I could drink you under the table, I could use more than you. It doesn't matter how much you can drink or use or whatever. Like you're not terminally unique. there's a lot of people like you. I guess the most profound one would be from a guy named Arnie Vaughn, and bless his heart. And he would say, if you're strong-willed, try to go to Shoppers Drug Mart after we meet and get X-Lax, take it all, and will yourself not to shit the bed. And
Yes, I've heard Arnie echo that many, many times.
I love Arnie. He was an amazing man and very integral in my recovery.
Yeah, to a lot of people's recovery. We sadly lost Arnie this year, but certainly the impact that he had on his life, on the world of addiction, will never be lost. That's for sure.
Yeah.
As with you, Colin, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being a living example of how a person can be at one point in time in their life a self-absorbed alcoholic in a state of psychosis, and change to become a loving, living contributor, a person with a lot of passion who helps people, and thank you for helping others. I know that you do a lot of service work, and that a big part of your recovery is about helping people. So very grateful for that. And again, thank you for doing this with us.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thanks so
Thanks
much.
for having me.
It's been a pleasure hearing your story, and yeah, I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this. So thanks again.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.
Colin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. See ya.
Yeah.